Hey there, it's Sam. This is a quick case study on the comedian Bill Maher, and it's a good case study because we have some good birth information. He was born January 20th, 1956, at 10:32 p.m. in New York. Brings up this chart, and he's a good case study in several things. Of course, he's a famous person, so you'd expect to see a good career, good career karmas. And he's had some controversies. He's had some interesting things happen. And most recently, as I record this on June 12th, 2017, he had what's been called a sort of teachable moment where he used the N-word on his TV show, and then, very much to his credit, invited some thought leaders on from the African American community to talk about it more and whatnot. So he's also a known atheist, very outspoken about his atheism. He's a comedian, but his comedy is quite biting. He's really very plain spoken in the sense of he doesn't have a sort of shtick, like he's not a comedian who, like Jerry Seinfeld, who gets up and says, what really bothers me, you get on an airplane and blah, blah, or whatever it is. He's not riffing, he's actually commenting on real things, and he's very much himself. This is why he's so likable to some extent, because there's a lot of integrity. He's just being himself. I mean, obviously, it's a performance, but it's also, he's not really politically correct at all. In fact, his show used to be called Politically Incorrect, because it doesn't matter who you are or what side of anything you're on. He's going to be very honest, and he's pretty critical of kind of anything that he perceives as BS. So it's refreshing, at least, to see someone who is in full integrity, what you would say. And after he made this mistake with with using the N-word, he came out very candidly apologized, then had Ice Cube, the rapper who was black, and other black people on there to talk about it. So you feel like it's sincere. He's also dated black women and stuff, so he obviously just didn't really get what it is. And it was interesting that Ice Cube used people like him, pretty much him, even as an example of some white folks who are too familiar. He says, maybe they get a little too close, maybe they date black women, or they're around a lot of black folks, and they feel like it's okay for them then to use the N-word. And Ice Cube is like, it really isn't. That's our word now. And when his black friends use it, it feels like it's okay, but anytime he hears a white person use the N-word, it feels like a knife. You got to respect that, whether anybody likes it or not, or whatever somebody's opinion is. This was the conversation that was had, and Bill Maher, much to his credit, sat there listening. He pushed back on a few things, but he was like, you could see he really got it. So, and the reason I'm bringing that up too is that you can tell that Bill Maher is, he has a lot of integrity. He's being honest. It's not a shtick. So anyway, we look at his chart. He's got a Virgo ascendant. I find it fascinating to look at the atheism is a big thing, because it's been a big part of his identity, and he ridicules religion on any level. Everything about religion he just ridicules. Again, for most people, he goes too far in that regard, but he's sincere in it, and he's quite smug in his in almost anything he does. He's very kind of smug. He's an easy person to dislike on some level as well, because he can be extremely smug and arrogant, and like everybody else is just much more stupid than he is. Like if you believe in the fairy godfather in the sky, he like tends to want to like mock anything that that he doesn't agree with. Far be it for him to especially realize about his atheism that maybe it's that he just doesn't understand the language of metaphor, or that you can't or you shouldn't be looking to define something that you disagree with in its worst excesses and then give all concessions, like for instance to science, as if science has no dark side, as if science has never been wrong, as if, science is the answer to everything. Hopefully one day we'll survive all of our scientific progress that's disconnected from, any kind of spirituality. But anyway, we see a Virgo ascendant. Virgo is ruled by Mercury. And again, you want to understand, religion and belief and faith is ruled by Jupiter. So it's not unusual to see Mercury-ruled people, or people with a prominent Mercury or something with Mercury, to have atheistic tendencies, because that's what Mercury does. Mercury's job is to question belief. That's what it's for. Jupiter is to say, believe in this big thing, and Mercury's to say, no, prove it to me. So you would expect on some level that someone who's an atheist especially will have a more prominent and noticeable and ease with Mercury energy than with Jupiter energy. He's ruled by Mercury, right? Virgo ascendant, ruled by Mercury, and his Mercury is powerful, forming a Raja Yoga. It's the 1st and 10th Lord, which is his identity and his career and work, in the 5th house, forming a Raja Yoga, ruler of 2 angles in a trine. Powerful, powerful Mercury. And of course it's in Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, very kind of sardonic, dry wit. I mean, he'll laugh at his stuff, but he can deliver it's very dry, Saturn, biting, bitter, cruel energy on some level. This is, he manages to make you laugh as he's doing it, but you can easily hear the focus underneath it all is an extreme bitterness and hostility and just useless, like astrology. Religion is useless. Belief and faith, useless, as an example. I just use that as an example of anything that he finds that is not worthy, or that is stupid, or that doesn't make sense. Again, Mercury, Virgo stuff, to him is just useless. One of the reasons why, it's not just that it's in Saturn's sign, but look at the aspects from Saturn. Saturn has a very tight aspect onto his sun, right? The sun is applying, it's a very strong applying aspect. Look at that, 649 of the sun, 727 of Saturn. Exact aspect from the sun onto Saturn. Saturn also aspects retrograde Jupiter in the 12th. Look, exact, within the degree. That's just exact. So you can see Saturn is clamping down. Mercury is ruled by Saturn. Mercury's retrograde. It's also Virgo, which is very much about accuracy, precision, purity, perfection. It's with the Sun, which is aspected by Saturn. Saturn's also aspecting Jupiter, which is retrograde, and in the 12th house. Again, it's not just Jupiter in the 12th or Jupiter retrograde. It's Jupiter retrograde in the 12th. And again, 12th house is things that confuse us. He's actually really confused about the nature and the meaning and the value of faith. He thinks it's just blind faith that makes you stupid and has no value. Of course, what he doesn't understand, because 12th house is also a blind spot, is his advocacy of atheism is in itself a very strong belief. And he's come out and even said many times, don't give me the bullshit that atheism is also a religion or a belief. No, it's not. Excuse my language for cussing, but once in a while, that's kind of his way of dealing with it. And again, the last thing he would want to think is that his atheism is in any way a religion. And he says it's not. Disbelieving in a religion is not a religion in itself. But again, he's confused about the fact that religion itself is simply what you believe. That's all it is. It's what you believe. That's what Jupiter energy is. It's what you believe. And if what you believe is every religion is BS, and you defend it with your life the way he does, he's more fervent, he's more religious in his atheism than most Christians are in their Christianity. He would defend that more than most of them would defend even their religion. So I don't want to make the whole thing about religion, but it's an interesting part of his character that we can see, and it's a great case study in religious fanaticism in the reverse, right? This is why I always tell my students, you have to understand Jupiter is just what we believe. Even if what we believe is corrupt or wrong, or even if what we believe is that we don't believe. But so look at how much energy is in his Jupiter. It's also in Leo. So whatever it is that he believes it with all his force. But his belief happens to be that religion is BS. And even to hear him say it, believing in that is BS. But believe in atheism, that's fine. And so that kind of blind spot. So you see Jupiter's retrograde, he's working through it. This is what retrograde planets do. This is why I always say the other thing with retrograde planets is they're very prominent. It was very bright. So this concept in his mind is very important to him. He thinks a lot about the meaning and purpose of life. And because Saturn is aspecting it, and he's a Virgo person, he's like, you're not going to trick me with this BS story. This story doesn't make any sense, and there's been a lot of harm done, and I'm not going to believe it. So you also see all the Mars. He obviously has a lot of Mars energy. And you could look at this. He's got a very prominent Mars. It's probably the most powerful planet in his chart. Mars is the ruler of Rahu in Scorpio in the third, and Saturn in the third. So he's got a lot of Scorpio energy. I mean, it's a pileup of the sort of what you would call the tamasic energy, which is the energy of protection, destroying weakness. Virgo ascendant, which is tamasic. Rahu, Mars, Saturn, the three malefics, the three cruel malefics, which doesn't include the sun, because the sun is not a cruel malefic because it's also sattvic. But the three tamasic malefics, three of the four, the other is Ketu, but in Scorpio. And obviously you're not going to get Rahu and Ketu in the same sign. So they're in Scorpio, tamasic sign. And no, I don't think Rahu does well in Scorpio at all. I don't like to assign debilitation to it, but certainly it's not helping Saturn energy for sure. Mars is helping it because Mars is the ruler of Rahu and Saturn. Remember, this guy is extremely famous, extremely good at fighting, winning battles, a great arguer, makes his case really well. I mean, he gets on in his political rants. You know, if you're on the other side from him, he is merciless. And this is at Mars. I mean, you see it's fueled a lot by Mars. Obviously, I almost expected he was an Aries or something ruled by Mars because he's so combative, but you'll see it either way, you know, or a Scorpio or something. But he's got Rahu, Mars, and Saturn in Scorpio. So his Saturn, and by the way, this was a phenomena that happened, you know, Rahu, Mars, Saturn in Scorpio. There are many charts that had that. He was born January 1956. Of course, I've seen many charts that had Rahu, Mars, Saturn. People born around the same time, and they're not all atheists and all that. You know, different ascendants, it makes for enormous devotion, enormous bhakti. It can make for a lot of things. But again, in this unique case, because this ascendant is here, it really turns this way. His moon is also in Aries, another fiery Mars. So his mind is also really fiery, right? So that really fiery moon in Aries makes also for enormous amount of combativeness. And so a couple other things that are sort of interesting. He says Venus moon is hemming. I often look for hemming. His seventh house is hemmed, which gives him good favor with people. He's likable in spite of being a bit of an idiot or a bit of an a-hole on some level. He's somehow likable, even though he's so biting, because he's laughing and all like that. And if you like what he says, he's kind of likable. But even if not, you have to begrudgingly respect him on some level. So Venus Moon gives him likability. You know, they're hemming the seventh house in spite of what's not a very, necessarily likable nature. He's even, I think, probably attractive to women, even though, again, he's got his really big nose and he's certainly sort of goofy looking, but, he winds up being, somewhat attractive to, on some level, certainly can get some good looking women and stuff like that. So, couple things also to look at. He's right now in Rahu Moon Dasha. So he's in the Rahu Dasha, which actually started right when he got fired. He got fired from his show Politically Incorrect in 2002, shortly after the 9/11 terrorist, when everybody called the terrorists cowards. He said, well, what's more cowardice is the United States sending cruise missiles from thousands of miles away. It certainly takes a lot of guts to get on an airplane and fly it into a building. I certainly wouldn't call that an act of cowardice, at least those individuals. He promptly got fired on that TV show for saying that. It wasn't a very popular thing to say. Again, that's his nature. He's just going to say what he thinks is true. And but that happened right as Rahu Dasha started. But look, so Rahu Dasha started, he gets fired. But look how powerful Rahu is. It's with its ruler, and it's with it's with its ruler in Scorpio, also with Saturn, which is the planet of, it's the fifth house ruler, Saturn is. So he certainly landed on his feet shortly thereafter. But the other important thing about Rahu is it rules Venus. You have to look at the rulerships. I teach this to my students all the time. You want to look at what the planets rule. Here's a good example. Because Rahu only rules nakshatras, and in his case it rules Shatabhishak nakshatra. And what's in Shatabhishak? Venus. Venus is the main planet of success for Virgo. Rules the 2nd and the 9th house. For him, his Venus, 2nd and 9th house ruler, which has to do with wealth, money, values, and speech, in the 6th house of, again, combativeness,